why property is really this f***ing good. So when you're investing against different asset classes, whether it's stocks, cash, gold, cryptocurrency, or property, there's a lot of pros and cons of each, with the cash flow differences, the growth in the capital or the asset value going through. The unique thing about property that makes it really good is leverage. So what is leverage? Well, leverage is utilizing somebody else in some way. Yes, it can be in their time, it can be with their skill set, or what I'm talking about is their money. It's almost like a common practice. Well, it is, right? But people really undervalue just how integral banks are to your wealth. Like, imagine going into your local bank, let's say I bank with Lloyds. I go into Lloyds and I say, hey, do you know what? I've got 25 grand in my pocket. I want to buy £100,000 worth of shares in Lloyds, in you. And I'd like you to loan me 75,000 so I can add it to my 25,000 so I can buy those £100,000 worth of shares. What do you think? No, you get laughed out, right? But if you think logically, why wouldn't they? If they trust in their stocks or any stock price, why wouldn't they loan out their money? And yeah, you go into a bank and you say, hey, look, I want to buy this buy-to-let investment. It's 100 grand. I've got 25 grand. Will you give me 75? And it's cash flow in and everything else. It's like, yeah. You go ahead, you have the money. In fact, you can go and do that again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And this is something that is truly unique in that, number one, from an asset class, it's one of the only ways to do it. But number two, you can do it if you've never invested in even a penny stock in your life. So the first of which is a mortgage. Okay, fairly common one. If you've not heard of a buy-to-let mortgage before, where have you been? But just to give you some basics of it, just so you've got an understanding, let's assume you are the average individual investing. So you've got a job. Usually the ideal situation is earning 25 grand or more on your salary. Let's assume you've got a clean credit history. If you haven't, go on something like Credit Expert, Experian, whatever it is. I think it's free for like 30 days, if not like 10 quid, 20 quid. Pay for it and look at yourself. You might be shocked. There might be something on it, but you've got a clean credit history. And ideally, you've got a home address, i.e. you're not living out at home with your mum or dad. Not a deal breaker, by the way, with any of those things. Just helps you get access to the best mortgages. So what is mortgage? Well, in Latin, mortgage actually comes from an old Latin word called death pledge. So the idea of it is debt until death. But that's not a bad thing, by the way. People think having loads of debt is bad. It's really not when it's good debt. So the most typical leverage or loan to value is 75%. What that means is the average buy-to-let property, you will put down a 25% deposit. For example, a £100,000 house, you will put down 25 grand, which again doesn't need to be yours, but conversation for another time. And the bank will give you 75% debt. Now, 75 grand, right? So you might think, oh, that's amazing. You build it up, but there's so many more benefits. The crazy thing is right now you'll pay about 5%. But what people don't think about is the fact that inflation is higher than that. So let me explain it in basic terms. If you have £100,000 in your bank account right now, you want to get it out as soon as possible. Either invest it or spend it. Do not keep it in your account. Because inflation is, let's say it's 1% a month. In real terms, it's actually much higher. Let's say 1% a month. Inflation is eroding the value of your capital. What it basically means is, if you have £1 now, or £1 in 12 months, what would you prefer? Well, £1 today for a multitude of reasons, but also because of inflation, £1 in 12 months' time is worth less. So think about that on the reverse. Let's say somebody gave you £1 and there's 10% inflation. When you pay back that £1 in a year, it's really the equivalent of paying them 90 pence back in terms of the value. Hopefully that makes sense, give or take. But if they're only charging you 5% for it, then you are making money by them lending you money and you borrowing. Now, I know that's a really hard concept to get your head around, but in general, if they're giving me 75 grand and the value of that 75 grand is diminishing by 10% over a year, and I'm paying 5% of the privilege, in real terms, I am making a 5% margin on the debt. The next thing that's amazing about debt, and I'll go through pros and cons in a moment, it's tax-free. So if you ever thought, like, think about these really wealthy individuals, their net worth's like 50 million, but they don't actually have any earning capabilities. So they don't have jobs like the aristocrats and all of that. What they're doing is leveraging against folios. So if they've got £50 million property portfolio, they'll just get £500,000 in their bank like that, pay absolutely nothing in terms of interest or next to nothing, and then obviously the value of the property goes up to 55 million and it pays down the debt again. That's how the wealthy live. But the thing is, if you sell something, you pay taxes on it. When you've got your job, you pay taxes on it. But when you get leverage, debt, against your property and get it out, it's tax-free, which is why when the value of the property goes up through time, people then do what is called refinance, which I'll talk about in a moment, to get more debt on the property, tax-free in the bank. So a mortgage is a debt pledge, and it's usually the safest debt both for the bank because they're going to get first charge, which I'll talk about in a moment, and it's safest for you because you pay the lowest interest. The next one is bridging. So bridging finance is kind of what it says. It's a bridge from you purchasing the property to you financing on a different vehicle. So most people will do something called bridge to let. What they'll do is they'll purchase property with bridging, maybe do a bit of work on it, and then 6 months later they'll use a mortgage to refinance the property and replace the bridging, i.e. the new mortgage pays off the bridging, which is a lot cheaper. The benefits of bridging is it's really quick. And also, it's not somebody in the background, computer says yes, computer says no, which with mortgages is a bit of a ball ache, if I'm honest. But with bridging, you've got somebody that can understand the situation, move quickly, and it's as close to a cash purchase as you're going to get without using your own cash. The downside is it's going to cost you. So I said I'd mention charges. In general, you will either have a first charge or a second charge on your property. A lot of people go, what's a charge? Well, a charge is security. So you might hear people go, yeah, but you don't actually own your property until you pay off the debt. The bank owns the property, really. That is just not true. Absolutely not true. All that means is you own your property, but the bank's giving you a lot of money. You could just do a runner with that. You could just walk away from the property, but they need their security. So a first charge is, say they've loaned you 75 grand. The first charge is going, cool, I'm going to put a first charge for my 75 grand on that property. So if you do a runner, I can force the sale of that property. Or if you stop paying me, eventually I can repossess you, sell that property and get my money back. So is leverage good or bad? Well, I'll deep dive on that in just a moment. But where can you find the best rates? And this is what I get asked all the time. How do you find the best rates? How do you find the fastest people? Now, who I use, and today's video sponsor, is Lendlord. I've been using Lendlord for a year and a half now, maybe. Done several bridging and refinances with them, and actually it's incredibly cost effective, incredibly speedy and effective for getting your purchases. And in today's market, it's all about speed and certainty. Great news, by the way, the platform costs absolutely nothing and you can get indicative charges for any purchase that you make. But I strongly recommend, if you're serious about investing in property and building a portfolio over time, you need to get on this now. What I'll do is I'll put a link in the description, click on there and create an account. I talk about Lendlord quite a lot on my channel, and the different things that you can do with it will blow your mind. It's not just lending. So as I said, check it out. Link is in the description. It's completely free for now to make your account. So the main downside of leverage is the fact that somebody else has loaned against it and it has a cost. So Technically, there's an increased risk because you can't just do nothing with the property. You owe somebody money. And number two is the interest rates. Naturally, your cash flow will be lower. If I'm renting something for £700 a month and I own it in cash, then all I've got is management and maintenance charges. Whereas if I've got debt against it, that might cost me £300 a month. So I'm no longer making that 700, I'm making 400 minus management and maintenance. And so it's important to know that. However, it's not just about the net return, it's about the return on capital employed. What return am I getting for the cash, my real cash that I've got in the property? And that's where leverage comes in, because leverage allows me to put less into each property, which means I can buy more, which spreads my risk and is going to dramatically increase my returns due to getting capital appreciation on 3 properties instead of 1. Now, how do I prefer to buy? Me personally, not financial advice. If I have 100, 150 grand plus, I would prefer to purchase a property in cash and then refinance, which is when you buy the property, do what you need to, and then get debt on it to release capital for my second purchase. But hey, that's just my opinion. Hopefully this has been a simple approach to what leverage is. Hopefully it helps you. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions whatsoever. I'll try to answer as many as possible. And like I said, if you want to understand the breakdown of figures and charges with either of these debts, you don't need to be going out and paying for a broker initially. Jump on Lendlord, put in some details, and it will show you an indicative breakdown so you know where you stand. And as I said, I'll put a link in the description. If you're new to the channel, you got value and you want to find out more about property investing, make sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and it will help me out a huge amount if you like me. Destroy the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.